Hello and welcome to the Craft Beer Corner. For today's beer review, we're jumping into a beer from a brewer I've never had anything from prior. This is from Bullfrog Brewery and it's called Roar Grrzz. And that's Grrzz. Don't ask, but that's the name of the beer. This is a Geuze style beer, 7.5% ABV on this one. It has been brewed with black raspberries, oak barrel aged, and also has additional Belgian Candy Sugars. Bullfrog Brewery is based in Williamsport, Pennsylvania. So first thing first, we can see it's a nice big old bottle of sour. Got the nice little champagne cork cage on top. Has a lion on the label. I'm guessing that's where the Grrzz come from. But nonetheless, that's what it is. So let's get this cage off. All right, and this was really a challenge to get off. The gauge of the wire on the cage for the cork was really, really thick, very hard to get off by hand. And then the cork was a real nightmare. I had to grab a towel to get enough gripping force, but we got it off. I can tell you as soon as this cork came out, I could smell the raspberry in the air. So give that cork a sniff. Oh yeah. Very, very tart, very pungent, very strongly of raspberry. I can tell you that this is one of those classic sours that has some kind of tutti fruity, juicy fruit gum overtones. So I'm expecting it to have a little funk, a little tartness, a little sour, but some of these underlying really interesting blend of fruit flavors that make sours so interesting and fun. So without further ado, we're going to get this poured right in the glass. Oh wow, that is a stunningly beautiful beer. That is as deep purple red as a red wine. That is just absolutely picture perfect. Man, that is a lovely beer in the glass. Wow. I don't know if the camera is doing that any justice. I doubt it because the colors tend to be a little darker and muted as they translate. But trust me when I tell you that is a deep, true purple. I mean, it is just deep, true purple. Just a little bit of a head. It's going to have a slight bit of cling to the sides, but for all intents and purposes, didn't really form one. That's what we want to see. Let's get right up over it for a proper sniff. Oh, yeah. Wow. Yeah. Tons of tart, tons of sour, little bit of funk, that underlying tutti frutti aroma, and just boatloads of black raspberry. This smells absolutely delicious. We're going to jump right in, see what this one's about. Oh yeah. Oh yeah, there it is. Okay, so right away, it's got a nice tartness to it. A little bit of a sour. It's more tart than sour really for my estimation. And it's got a good kick up front, but it's not like blow you out of the water kind of intensity here. It's really nice. It feels very balanced to me in terms of how the sour is presenting itself. So the tutti frutti aromas don't really translate, but just a slight suggestion into the glass. But the funk that you can kind of pick up on the nose is translated in the glass, but again, it's not over the top. It's really more dominant tart punch, a little bit of sour behind it, and then just this overwhelming pungency of these blackberries underneath, the black raspberries underneath. Smells absolutely fantastic, tastes absolutely fantastic. Flavor profile is a little bit different than I expected to get just based on the aroma, but pleasantly so. Belgian Candy Sugar's in here. That's going to help boost up the ABV. That's a reasonably common thing in some sour styles. In a Geuze, it's, you know, it is what it is. I don't know as though I can necessarily say, hell yeah, I'm picking up these Belgian Candy Sugars. Really more, it's just giving extra fermentables for the ABV to get pushed up when that hungry yeast is eating and converting those sugars into alcohol. But first sip, it's a real winner. I'm going to jump in for body and mouthfeel, think a little bit more on flavor development on second sip, and explore this finish. Oh yeah, really intensifies the flavor. Wow. That's such a good beer. That's such a good beer. So, 7.5% ABV. That's pretty high for a sour. No question about it. But this is not a heavy beer. I would say it's light to medium light, kind of on that border. It's got a little more weight to it than your average sour, but it's not heavy. In terms of the mouthfeel, it doesn't feel particularly viscous, but it is a slight bit more resistant than your average sour. And I can tell you up front, it's mostly a very wet experience, and then it slowly starts to dry out the palate, so it does end up with that classic crisp, dry finish on the end. How does that affect the actual flavor extension on the finish? Well, it doesn't really truncate it at all. The flavors are very bold, they're very pungent, and they have a very natural shape on the bell curve to the decay. So it ramps up and then holds and then it ramps back down. And really what you're left haunting on the back of the palate is just that fleeting bit of black raspberry off of the end, a little bit of the underlying sour and tart, and really it's the oak that comes into its own on the end of this beer after the dryness starts to happen. That's where the oak really makes its presence known. After the black raspberry intensity starts to decay, that's when the oak barrel really comes through. So everything that they did to this beer is really translating quite well into the glass. Overall, this is a very, very tasty sour. I'm going to take my time, sip on this, come up with my scores. When we come back, we will get this one ranked from top to bottom. All right, now that I've gotten to enjoy this beer, I'm going to get it ranked. So this is Bullfrog Brewery's Roar Grrzz, Grrzz. This is a Geuze, oak barrel aged, black raspberry flavored, Belgian Candy Sugar added. 7.5% ABV on this one. Bullfrog Brewery is based in Williamsport, Pennsylvania. So starting with the aroma, as is so typically the case with the sour, it's just a bold, pungent aroma. These beer styles typically are quite intense. This was no exception. You can pick up the sour, the tart, the slight funk, that underlying tutti fruity, juicy fruit aroma as well. The black raspberry, it was all in there. Aroma does get a perfect 10 out of 10. For the taste, this is exactly what I expect, and this is just a well-crafted sour. Not every sour is equal, though they do tend to be, seems for my money, a bit more consistent than other beer styles, just based on the nature of them. You know, some people, oh, it's gimmicky sour. No, it isn't. It's a very old beer style, and these are very complex. So for this to get the pungency of flavors, have their additive ingredients play their part, and come through in the flavor profile, I think it's expertly crafted. The taste on this one does get a 10 out of 10. For the body, this one's 7.5% ABV. That's quite a bit higher than your average sour. So it did have a little bit weightier body, but it was certainly about where I expected for this ABV range. So I dock no points here. Body does get a 10 out of 10. Mouthfeel, similar story. It had a little bit more resistance than the typical mouthfeel on the sour, but other than that, it felt exactly normal. Higher ABV, it felt what I expected, very actively in terms of carbonation. Nice drying effect on the end. That's textbook mouthfeel. Does get a 10 out of 10. For the finish, overall, this was a significantly longer finish than your average sour. But the flavors that they put in this one were very big and bold and intense. The sheer volume of black raspberry that went into making this, you can tell as readily apparent by the color, but it was very, very intense and flavorful. Often you'll get sours that have things added, but the sour itself is so intense that it kind of, the flavors that they add play second fiddle. This, it really was prominent, and frankly, the intensity of flavor really helped push it out significantly longer than your average. Finish gets a 9 out of 10. For the head and retention, this one, as with most sours as you're pouring, first tries to do a little, and it's really just from the jostling as you're getting your pour started, but for all intents and purposes, no head, nothing stuck around. That's what you want to see in a sour. Head retention gets a perfect 10 out of 10. For the appearance, maybe the camera didn't pick it up, but this was just a stunningly beautiful beer, and I mean that. Very deep, true purple color, similar to a red wine. It was just beautiful. Appearance gets a 10 out of 10. For the balance, I talked about this in terms of the flavor, and really the balance is the key. So yes, it's sour. Yes, it's got this nice sour and tart and funky overtones, but they took the time to add in these Belgian candy sugars that help boost the ABV, added this underlying quirk to it, as well as boatloads of black raspberry, and it all worked in perfect harmony. The balance for me gets a 10 out of 10. Feeling the intangible subjectively, I loved it. Just a really, really well-crafted Geuze. Feeling intangible gets a 10 out of 10. Finally, as an example of the style, this beer swept it in all but one category. It only lost 1 point. Example of the style as expected. Does get a perfect 10 out of 10, which brings the total score on Bullfrog Brewery's Roar Grrzz Black Raspberry version to a 99 out of 100. Just about beer perfection. Folks, this was the first beer I've had from this brewer. Very exciting, very well crafted. If this is what they're about, I'm going to be keeping my eyes out for any more I can grab from this brewer, and I would certainly encourage you to do the same. As per usual, I did get this one from Tavour. Folks, that's today's review. As always, I do sincerely appreciate you tuning in today. Please don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And if you want to know when our videos go live to YouTube, you can toggle on the notifications with the bell icon right next to the subscribe button. Till next time, keep it beer, keep it craft. We'll see you on the next one. Cheers.